Very good afternoon to the Sportsfan Radio panel. Another lockdown edition of this show, and a very special guest today, who not his first time on Sportsfan Radio, but we always enjoy seeing him. Now the member, and for some 3 years, the member for Sandringham, Brad Rowswell. Very good afternoon, Brad.
Yeah, g'day, Prof. Great to be with you and the team, mate.
So you're first on the show in October 2018, and then make a comeback in October 2019. We couldn't get you on last year because we're all locked down, and we hadn't quite worked out how to do this yet. But we've got you again, so good to see you. And how have you been spending 240 plus days of lockdown?
Well, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that the community that you broadcast in and that I represent has been absolutely smashed by lockdowns. This constant yo-yo of, up and down, in and out of lockdown, the uncertainty that comes with that. Just think about, all those businesses. Now, there's still a bunch of businesses who can open for takeaway services and for click and collect services, but there's still a whole bunch of businesses who just can't open full stop. And, investment decisions are made around that, and staffing decisions are made around that, and ordering decisions are made around that. And when businesses can't open, people aren't employed, they don't earn a wage, they find it hard to, pay their bills, pay their power bills, their school kids' fees, their amenity bills, their food bills. It's struggle street, mate. And just, I think what our community needs now more than ever at this point in our history is hope. It's optimism. It's certainty. It's a roadmap that's a realistic roadmap that brings people along with us and just gets on with it. Because for goodness sake, I've never thought to consider Melbourne and Buenos Aires in the same sentence before in my life. And for the first time in history, we've gone from the most livable city in the world to the most locked down city in the world. It's just rubbish, mate.
Yeah. And you remember when it first happened, there was worried, a lot of people worried there was going to be a baby boom. I can say one thing about the women I know, they're not getting out the jazz CDs and the putting the candles out. Most mates of mine are trying to just stay out of the way. I don't know about a baby boom. It could go the other way, I think.
Well, we're quite happy with 2 kids, and there's not many more planned at this point in time.
Yeah, well, I think I get more annoying when you're stuck with me. Don't worry about that.
Brad, being a sports show, there'd be quite a number of your constituents tied up with grassroots sport. Have you had any feedback from them about how it's affecting them?
Well, the uncertainty's been a bit hard to deal with. Look, I must say, in the almost 3 years since I was elected, and even before that, playing grassroots sport myself for the Bowie Sharks and the Bowie Cricket Club and being around and about. Look, local footy clubs and local sporting clubs, as you guys know better than most people, they're probably, I don't know, maybe 40% sport and maybe 60% community, I'd say, just if I was having a guess. Like it's just the opportunity for connectedness. It's the opportunity to bring people together and to get, put people in a situation that gives them the opportunity to connect and to relate to other people and to participate in something that's team orientated and team focused. And that's been, I think, the toughest thing. But that said, I'm aware of a number of local sporting clubs who have gone above and beyond to try and continuing engaging their members and their teams during the course of this year. I saw this on my social media recently. There was a virtual presentation night, but the coach still took the initiative and went and dropped off all those awards and medals individually to those households. Safe distancing and masks and the rest of it. But just a bit of that connectedness, I think, just helps us get through it all. But we've lost that, and not to mention the finances of clubs as well. Rightly, sponsors, when they put their hand up to sponsor a club, they want to do the right thing by the community and by sports clubs, but they also want bang for their buck. And sports clubs, because we haven't been able to actually play, they haven't been actually able to continue with their seasons this year. They haven't been able to give them that bang for their buck, and so that's a question of you haven't got as much revenue coming in, so are you able to afford sponsorship? If you are able to afford sponsorship and you're not getting that bang for your buck, well, what do you do? I know that's hit sporting clubs as well, Prof, and it's just been tough all round. But, I said this at the end of 2020, let's hope for a better 2021. I'm saying at the end of 2021, let's hope for a better 2022, and let's get on with it.
Yeah. I shot you an article that appeared on ABC with respect to the Australian Sports Foundation survey. Talked about 9,000 clubs across Australia perhaps going to the wall and their income being hit, which was the point that you were talking about there. That can't be good for the community if things like that are happening, especially now that we're trying to come out of it and see what we've got left.
No, precisely. Well, that's one of the reasons why my side of politics, proposed a $10 million community sports fund where, local sporting clubs can nominate for up to a 50K grant, just to, try and get their clubs over the line over the next little while. And I guess my concern, Prof, is that, when the government has been dealing with COVID and coronavirus, they're dealing with a very specific circumstance of COVID itself, and without the capacity to look beyond that and the other impacts on the community, such as the impact on local sporting clubs, such as the impact on things like, tragically mental health, right? And self-harm and suicide and elder abuse and all those other things that we know has been going on, domestic violence. I mean, I read just earlier this week that there's been a significant increase in domestic violence incidents as well. And this is my concern. And this is what I say, what I mean when I say we need a positive, constructive, optimistic roadmap out. We need to consider all of that holistically, not just responding continuously to this, COVID stuff over and over and over again. Because arguably, our ticket out of COVID's a vaccine. Now, you might agree with that, you might not agree with that, but that's my view. Whereas all those other things, they're much more complex, they're much more complicated. And, that includes a sporting club, local sporting club recovery. So, which is one of the reasons we propose that. Now, what the government will do, who knows, but we think that's the right thing to do.
Brad. Oh, sorry.
Go on, Gelding. Go on, Gelding.
Brad, involved in local sporting clubs outside of your district, but not far away.
Yep.
Councils, local councils as well, seem to still be after their bite for the buck to seem to survive. Is there much dialogue between Parliament, local councils, and the actual sporting bodies? And the body I'm involved with is a cricket club. So there's Cricket Australia and Cricket Victoria. There seems to be no respite from those professional bodies to local sporting clubs, which provide the players for their areas. And there just doesn't seem to be any talk between local councils and state government. Is that true? And what process could be put in place to assist local sporting clubs?
Gelding, I'm not my brother's keeper when it comes to local councils. They run their own show, and but that does get fed back to me as well. And everyone's been through a bit of pain during the last 18 months. And if I was a local council who was still, charging sporting clubs for access to sporting grounds or whatever it might be, mate, I'd prefer to go in the red if I was in council and cop a bit of pain for a few years rather than have the headline of a surplus at the end of it, because that pain needs to be shared, and it can't be the brunt of that can't be borne solely by community clubs and by locals as well. I know in this area, Bayside Council chose to put their rates up.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? During this time, with so much pain around us and so many, and yet you might think, Bayside, it's an affluent area. Well, I'm telling you now, gents, yeah, sure, there are pockets of affluence. Absolutely there are. But there's also pockets of significant poverty and people who are really struggling. And I'm telling you that because, I'm doing my best to try and help some of those people as well. So, what does it cost you to have a conversation, Gelding? What does it cost a sporting association to do what they need to do, engage local clubs, engage local councils, and get on with it? If that's not happening, it should be happening, mate.
Maybe they should give free rates like the Melbourne Storm have given free memberships to their fans because they haven't been able to see any games, which is a fair move on their part.
Paul, all I can comment on, and without naming the council on that, they've cut services in the area such as garbage collections and that. They're making that a bit harder, charging more. Their rates have gone up for the houses, but they're also charging the sporting club a fee for a ground that we can't get on, even though we're the club. And of course, they use the analogy, well, if you don't want to pay it, we've got other clubs that want to come in and use that facility.
That sounds reasonable, Gelding.
Gil, it's not an analogy, it's a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it made sense, it wouldn't be 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one of the other issues that local council Gelding has a part to play in at the moment, and in my view, they're not, right? So in this area, we've got 3 major developments planned in the next, say, decade to 15 years. You've got the old CSIRO site in Hyatt, you've got the gas and fuel land on the Nepean Highway in Hyatt, and now with the suburban rail loop, you've got the William Fry Reserve on the corner of Bay Road and Nepean Highway, all earmarked for high-density high-rise, right? So we're talking like 1,000+ dwelling apartment blocks on each of those sites. So really, has local council really thought this through? Because I would have thought that as your population increases, and if your offering is sort of lower cost dwellings, so apartment type dwellings, that, maybe young families might be attracted to that. Well, where's the thinking around, access to school education, access to sporting fields, all that sort of stuff. That's one of the reasons, and I've spoken to Prof about this before, but, the gas and fuel land on the Nepean Highway Hyatt, for goodness sake, just preserve the vast majority of it for community use. Put a couple of multi-use sporting fields on there and prepare for the next generation instead of just slapping high-density high-rise left, right and centre.
Make it a sporting hub.
Yeah, and making silly decisions without actually fully thinking it through.
Yep. Baseball, basketball, netball, football, soccer, it would be fantastic.
We shouldn't forget the beautiful community facility at Linton Street, though.
Yeah, more information, Coutta.
That's right.
Well, St Kilda's training facilities there that they share with community football, and the ability to access that wonderful facility. I would have thought that's a well spent money. I would have thought.
Do me a favour, Coutta. When you talk about share, would you define that, please?
Or dictatorship.
No, share equals sole use, doesn't it?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just from afar, Professor. Just wondering the best use of money in the community at the moment. Yeah.
Brad, I'm interested in your suggestion, or your party's suggestion about a fund for community sport, because when I read that report, it seems to me like it's talking about an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is clubs going to the wall. What's not spoken about in that report is a whole lot of things that follow from that. First of all, clubs spending in the community, right? So we've got Gelding's Cricket Club. If they're not playing, they're not buying things in the community, gear, food to on-sell. That's affecting distributors. It's not a source of income for players because semi-professional, they're getting paid for playing. So those players don't have the income to spend in the community. You've got the local pie and bread shops, drinks, confectioners, they're not selling. You've got less money circulating in the community. So repeat that all over Victoria or Australia. That's a fair bite of the pie that's coming out that is underneath the water and people aren't really thinking about. I can give Coutta and I involved in local radio, and Brad, you've said very small organisation, but in the past, part of their budget is made up of broadcasting local football. Now, no local football, no income. That's impossible for the community radio station to recover from. So they've just got to wear that loss. So it affects. One last thing. Most of the clubs are overseen by professional leagues where people are employed by the leagues. If the leagues aren't making money because there's no competition, and now there's no JobKeeper, what happens to those employees? Like the leagues can't keep funding wages if there's no money coming in. So look, it's just horrible.
Well, I've never seen a community sporting club saying that league should be getting more dough to employ more people. Prof, just as an aside, but as you say, the economic impact, absolutely, it's the tip of an iceberg. Absolutely, because it flows down, right? There's a whole economy sitting behind the operation of a local sporting club that is now screwed because of the circumstance people are in. But to my earlier point, and I think this is something that's much harder to equate and harder to overcome, and that's the connectedness and community part that community sports plays in community. Yep. You know, when people are removed from each other, when that relationship isn't allowed to be there, when kids, as they're growing up, mate, I look back fondly to my time. You know, I was a terrible footballer, right? I started off at the back pocket and slowly graduated to centre half bench for the Bowie Sharks. So we didn't win a premiership, under 14s Lightning premiership all those years ago. But it wasn't thanks to my prowess, I'll tell you. But I still remember those days fondly for the opportunity, that community connectedness piece. You know, that opportunity to go to training on a Tuesday or a Thursday night, to catch up with your mates, a bit of sport, a bit of activity. Have a run around the field and kick the footy and spend time with your mates, and then get up on the Saturday morning, and it brings people together. You know better than most the amount of people that just love turning up to a footy ground, and they've got no direct connection to a club at all, or to a cricket club or to whatever, but they love just turning up and watching community footy because it's their thing to do on a Saturday or their thing to do on a Sunday, and they meet other people there, and there's that community connectivity and connectedness that's allowed to happen, and that's been abandoned. So,
Brad, I know we've got 8 junior sides, right, under 16s, all the way down and that. And I could just imagine how much parents are missing the fact that their kids can't get out to clubs to run around, to give them a break from homeschooling, but they also like to get out and things like that. And you just can't do anything, So these kids, all they do is run around a park. Like, they're not sitting on one another's laps, coughing in one another's faces. They're just screaming around the park at 450 miles per hour, expanding all the energy. So, because they've been cooped up. But what you're saying just seems to make common sense.
Yeah, if only common sense was so common when it comes to government, Gelding.
Yeah.
Just on that, Brad, you're certainly preaching to the converted in talking to us about the benefits of sport. And I think it mostly comes down to health. Obviously, the physical health, but the mental health of people is massive, and the participants, but also just people in lockdown, get a lot of benefit from actually just seeing sport on television or live. Can I just suggest, and something we've spoken about in this program for a while, the whole concept of a minister for sport is a nonsense. Now, I'd be surprised if anybody in the panel know who the current minister for sport is. Most people in Victoria wouldn't. Do you know, Coutta?
I was going to say Martin Pakula because he's got about 3 hats. But I don't think he's the Minister for Sport. It might be Molino.
No, well, you win the prize, Coutta, because he is, but he's also the Minister for Tourism and Major Events, the Minister for Jobs, Innovation and Trade, and Minister for Racing. So it goes without saying that sport sort of gets shoved in there. Look, we'll just throw it at the top of the
There's also a Minister for Community Sport.
Yeah.
There's also...
Who's that?
And then there's a minister.
Is that Brad?
It's a joke that we've got a minister for sport. It's really the minister for cutting ribbons. And what I think we ought to do is roll the whole Ministry of Sport into a serious portfolio called the Ministry for Health. For a start, it'll actually represent what sport actually does, which is improve the physical and mental health of people. It'll stop ministers grandstanding, turning up to every ribbon that needs to be cut, and suddenly we'll get a serious portfolio with some serious money behind it, where we can look at these issues of sport and be properly funded. Otherwise, sporting clubs become like beggars, always having the begging bowl out for local government, state government, federal government. It's very ad hoc. This report of the Australian Sports Foundation, I've read it through it. Professor's got this truism that when you want to find out about a report, find out who commissioned it, and that'll give you the answer that you want to get. I won't say it's a disgrace, but it is scientifically and mathematically incorrect. I won't go into all the details, but it basically says COVID's been a real bastard. You guys are screwed, and we'll show you how to fundraise. Well, that's fantastic. So in other words, the government's become a fundraising organisation for you. Well, they want more than fundraising. They want more than a pat in the back. They actually want some attention, whether that's money or whether that's resources put to sport. That's what community wants, because make no mistake, forget the AFL, forget the NRL, real sport played by the vast majority of people is grassroots sport. And I think that's been absolutely given the middle finger by governments at every level. And that's why I think we ought to roll the sports ministry finally into the Ministry of Health.
Well, there's a very well-funded gun club in Sydney, but we'll leave that one to ICAC, I think.
There was also one in Wangaratta too, by the way. My hometown.
Just a snappy little 5 million. That's a lot of ammo up there, but we'll leave that to Gladys to answer those questions.
Yeah. Well, Brad, do you think the Ministry of Sport should be given the flick and rolled into the Ministry of Health where it belongs?
Yeah, you make a very strong case, and I think you're right. What is at the heart of it? What is sport about? So yes, it's health. Yes, it's fitness. Yes, it's community connectivity. But I agree. I think that the sporting portfolio has become one where you just you rock up and you got your box seats at the Australian Open and at the Caulfield Cup and the Melbourne Cup, and it's used as a bit of a glad handling exercise and a ribbon cutting exercise. And what is the strategy for sporting government? What do they want to see? And look, I must be frank, fellas, at a political philosophical level, I don't really think that government has all the answers about this. I really don't. If there are local clubs that need stuff done, I reckon they should be working with their leagues, their professional leagues in the first place. Those leagues should be then used as a way to come to government to say, this is what we want, this is what we think things should look like. And government should listen. And whether there's a sport portfolio or not a sport portfolio or whatever, it shouldn't excuse the fact that governments have a responsibility to listen and to respond in a legitimate way.
Well, Brad, if you're the Minister for Tourism, Major Events, Jobs, Innovation and Trade and Racing, I'm going to tell you, sport will take up about, I'll say best 5% of your time. So you cannot be, I think, a proper sports minister. By the way, community sport doesn't want government involvement. What they want is let us go and run it, guys. But sometimes we need help. Yeah, that's where we want government to help. This report, God, it's sad reporting. So sad to read. Devastating financial instability, declining participation, declining volunteering. Well, that's a cry for help. Sports organisations are not political beasts, but they have said very loudly, very clearly, we want help. That's where you want the government. You don't want the government to get involved and to be on TV and get their noggin, on some oval, pushing a footy around. I noticed the Western Australian Premier the other day, all kicking a football, and seriously, if you can't kick a football, don't do it on national television.
Was it up there with John Howard having a go at the fast
exactly right. It was about as good a kick as John Howard bowled that time. So trust me, we don't want to see our politicians involved in sport. So get out of the way, but give us some money and some resources when we need it.
Oh, but hold on, we all need a photo op occasionally, John.
I tell you what, Brad. I saw that effort, and just on your description, you would have been in no. You wouldn't have lost your spot in your team to him. That's for sure. It was just terrible.
It was.
I was wandering around when we were in lockdown. We could still catch up and do outside meetings. I caught up with Marcus Ashcroft at the Sandy Footy Club, and took great pleasure in with a footy in hand, just wandering around the oval down there at Jack Barker Oval, and we did probably 8 laps during the course of the meeting. It was fantastic. And as I was coming up to the wing, to the forward pocket, I just sort of snuck one in just around the corner there, just like that. So I still got it. It was wonderful to prove to myself.
Martin Pakula is the minister, and Judge, I'm not sure if you're on Twitter or not, but
no.
He's pretty active on Twitter, so he must have some spare time on his hands, Martin.
Good. Well, that's good, Coutta, because I can talk to all the people, the real people who read Twitter. Has you been talking about how much money he's going to give to community sport recently?
No, he'd be probably talking about how we can get people back to the races, I think.
Racing seems to be high on his agenda, I understand, Coutta.
Yeah, because he wants to go to the opening of an envelope. He gets a free lunch and a free bottle of wine.
Gelding,
the committee.
Gelding, I know you'll be disappointed, Gelding, with this. You'll be extremely disappointed, but the birdcage is not going to happen this year.
Yes. Yeah.
So
what are you going to do with your frock?
I tell you what's on instead of a party at Nadia Bartel's.
Oh.
Brad, what's
Allegedly.
What's the liberal platform on community sport, if there is one? So I was interested to know, just learned that there's a minister for community sport. So you must have a platform on this issue, and particularly in COVID times.
We've got to. So as we're in opposition, Judge, we're in. We have a shadow minister for sport, and
who's the shadow? Seriously, who's the shadow minister for sport?
Yeah, Cindy McLeish. So it's just a recent change. She's a former deputy leader of the party, and she's a former. I think she was CEO at Golf Victoria for some time. So she's got a bit of cred in the community sports space, at least at an administrative level. So if anyone on our side of politics is going to get community sport from that administrative level anyway, it's probably Cindy. So she was appointed probably 3 weeks back as Shadow Minister for sport, and it was her and Matthew Guy that came out with this community sport announcement just recently. In terms of broader stuff, to be frank, we haven't got much else at this point in time in terms of what community sport might look like for us ahead of an election in November next year. But we've got a bit of time to think about that. And
okay, who's the Shadow Minister for Health?
Georgie Crozier.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, former nurse, ICU. Alfred trained nurse, and she's done a reasonable job, I think, in the last little while.
Well, she'd be the perfect person to start to talk about physical and mental health of Victorians, and
former star netball player as well. So
yeah, okay. That's promising.
You're running Golf Victoria now. All you're worried about is getting the toilets open.
What a silly thing that is. I mean, for goodness sake, if there was anything, if there was ever going to be a safe sport to play during COVID, it'd be golf, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be golf?
Yep.
I mean, with my clubs and my hip flask, I spend next to zero time next to anyone on a really good day on a golf course. So
it's lucky you're not back playing cricket, Gelding. You'd know this. I used to be a fast bowler, a right arm erratic, they called me, but we called it white pants syndrome. As soon as you put the pants on, you need to go to the facilities. I don't know whether it's the nerves or whatever, that fight or flight mentality, but you wouldn't want a bunch of cricketers without a toilet, I can assure you.
I'll have to take your word for it.
The nervous one before an opening over, do you think?
What's
the nervous one before the opening over?
Oh, before I'd go to bat, yeah, I wouldn't sort of be out there for long batting, but yeah.
I would say one thing, Paul, in another life as an opening batsman, I certainly wouldn't want to have faced you, because if you're half as erratic as you are on the radio, God knows where the ball's going to go.
Oh, yeah,
if you've got no
idea.
If you've got no idea, I'd have no idea.
And if the batsman was on the mouth, the keeper would go back about 10 paces because it'd be coming in like a Hezbollah rocket.
Real Steve Harmison at the Gabba, I'm predicting.
All right. Listen, Brad, thanks for spending some time with us today. We really appreciate it. It's a tough job at the moment. Our thoughts are with you. And look, we look forward to seeing you in the local community. Can't be long till the next election, mate.
November next year, gents. So we're in the almost the final 12 months, and we'll just get on with it. It's an opportunity to do things differently in Victoria, and it's my job to try and help propose what that difference looks like, and continue supporting the community and community sporting clubs as well. And yeah, I tell you what, I can't wait to get back to community sport and just, wander around the Oval and go to those lunches and it just can't come soon enough.
I can tell you one man you've done a bit of transition from footy into politics, Mal Meninga.
Oh, is
a little stint today's lasted longer than his career did. So.
Is he running? Is he?
Oh, he had to go for about, I think it was about 48 seconds was his career. He was asked, what are your policies? And he said, no, I'm buggered. That was it. And Big Mal was gone.
Sounds like a Billy Brownless attempt to get into politics.
Big Mel's only known to me for one other reason, gents, and I'll perhaps leave it there.
All right, Brad. Thanks for that. You can stick around if you want, but we understand if you've got other things you need to do. We'll now cross to Paul. Now, it's up to you. Bring us home. NRL Grand Final. It is actually going to be played, the game, I understand.
Well, to think that a few months ago I was planning to go to Brisbane and maybe a couple of days on the Gold Coast, and in a perfect world, my Rabbitohs would have been playing. I've got one of the two dreams that I had, and it's my boys are there for the grand final, which surprises me somewhat. We're playing against the team, and I have, without blowing the trumpet, tipped the last 5 flag winners, I think, a few months out. Unfortunately for me, I tipped the Panthers a few months ago. So if I make it 6 in a row at about 10 o'clock tonight, I'll still be in this jersey, but I might be a little bit down. But just the thought that we're there is enormous. It's two very proud sporting communities. Speaking of communities, the Rabbitohs spirit, and John, you asked during the week for some history of the club. The Rabbitoh name actually came from, it was the working class people of the South Sydney area. The rabbit was the meat of choice back before it was $40 a plate at a French restaurant with a bit of mustard on it. And the person selling the rabbit meat would go from door to door or street to street, and they'd yell out "Rabbitoh, Rabbitoh, Rabbitoh" to get their tucker. So that's the story of the Rabbitohs name. As a mate pointed out, though, we can't really call ourselves battlers anymore. We're owned by Russell Crowe, and to buy yourself a little townhouse in the South Sydney area probably costs you about $3 million. So it's not really a battlers area or ownership, but it is certainly a salt of the earth team. I don't think you'll find a Rabbitohs fan who's not pretty grounded. We've had some pretty tough times, much like the Demons and you, St Kilda Judge. But the Panthers' story, and this might surprise you, I don't want them to necessarily win because I tipped them to do so. It is a great story, is that the majority of this team, the Penrith team, is from the local area. Now, this isn't a criticism of AFL, but there's not many AFL teams where 3/4 of the team are from the local area. So I really think that's important. And there was a documentary a few years ago called Struggle Street about the Mount Druitt area. And that, interestingly, is where 5 of these players who'll take to your screens tonight come from that very one suburb. So it's a great area. It's the very area that AFL wants to target with GWS. But there's a pretty good football team there that's got the best nursery this side of Jamie Jury's show. So they've got juniors galore. This Penrith team is something, and they're a juggernaut. I wouldn't say that I'm nervous as such. I could have done without Russell Crowe saying during the week with his book of feuds, I still don't know what the benefit of that is. He came out and said that these Penrith players are like hillbillies coming out of the hills. Now, I sort of wish when he was in Gladiator, one of the Lions might have grabbed him, because all that sort of talk is only going to fire up the opposition. I have no idea what this book of feuds is supposed to achieve. But calling the opponents hillbillies, I don't think one of his finest ever acts, Professor. I don't know what you think about that type carry on, but it will be an amazing game. I think it'll be tight. The Storm, unfortunately, their wheels came off last week against Penrith. It was a pretty ordinary performance from the Storm. A lot of errors there, more than they'd make in the entire year, and they saved it up. They fluffed their lines, if you want to use that expression, Professor, for the Storm fans. And it didn't get much better when the boys decided to let their hair down. Cameron Munster jumping on a coffee table, Brandon Smith, both of whom are up for contract extensions. I think they might have conservatively cost themselves about $1 million each with that little session, whatever that involved, with no reference or link to Nadia Bartel there, Professor.
Paul, the Cameron Smith this week, I think, has spoken pretty well. Storm win that game by 20 plus points last Saturday if he's playing. The reason I say that is that he is the most calming influence on the field. And the other week that Storm tried to score off every play. Every play they tried to score from. Now, that was because they were playing manic rugby league, which isn't suited, one, to finals, but also isn't suited to the way the Storm play. So with Cameron Smith, he's that steadying influence. And Harry Grant didn't have his greatest game. But again, they've had an amazing season considering the transition. Injuries as well in that final sort of did conspire against them a little bit with regards to Brandon Smith going off and also Christian Welch.
Yeah, the go forward.
Christian Welch is an interesting one because he's had quite a few concussion or HIAs. And we've seen with Boyd Cordner and we've seen with a few other players, the more common sort of HIAs and the head injuries. So I think Christian Welch is a bit of a watch and see going forward. But, yeah, Penrith played well, low-scoring game, grinded out a victory. But I would think that game for your Souths team would have been nice to watch because, gee, it was physical.
Nice. I almost wanted to see it on another type of channel, but it was that exciting. It was that enticing, if you want to use that word. I'm quietly confident because we've had the week off. You said physical. I'd call it was an all-out war, and the Panthers weren't overly impressed. The Storm, I think, carried on a bit much when they beat them last year. The Penrith Panthers have long memories, and they didn't have to go back too far. They were playing like men possessed. They defended like men possessed, and it's that defence, ironically, that is the worry for South tonight. We have one of the best attacking teams I've ever seen. Points scored, I think we've set the record. We've scored more points than anyone. It's all going to be about whether the Rabbitohs can keep it together. You made a good point with the Storm. They're like a boa constrictor. Once they get on top and around you, they've got you. But they never had the chance to do that because Penrith came out of the blocks and they just defended so well. So they never let the Storm get on with it. As you say, Cameron Smith perhaps would have made a difference. That sort of platform that the Storm often lays for the players like Munster and Harry Grant, that wasn't there. And so the game plan went out the window. With the Rabbitohs, Wayne Bennett has obviously shown that he's all out-and-out genius. We lost Latrell Mitchell, yet that's our best player, yet we've somehow made it. Cody Walker's stepped right up. The interesting thing is going to be Blake Tapp at the back. The bloke's played about 7 games, and he's in a grand final, if you don't mind. So he's one of the reasons that we're letting Adam Reynolds go, and I'm still very, very sad about that. This is a kid that grew up in the shadow of Redfern Oval. In Housing Commission flats, used to kick a ball up and down the street with his brother. You couldn't get more red and green than Adam Reynolds. It's his last game tonight. Benji Marshall is hinting at possibly coming back for another year. Wayne Bennett's last game. He loves a big stage more than Pavarotti. So it's all setting up for what will be an absolute cracking $5 million this will rate. I'll call it now, this match tonight. It'll just be an absolute spectacle for the senses. It'll be war, it'll be entertaining, and if you don't enjoy it, that's the best we've got in rugby league town, people.
Paul, tonight I think the other thing out of the Storm game that you sort of saw was the 10 metres. I hope they enforce that tonight and they don't go back to maybe doing it or not. 10 metres is there for a reason and it should be refereed for that reason. You do not want forwards hitting each other at the line of scrimmage. You actually want them to be able to run a little bit, which then obviously creates the point scoring out of the back of it. Having said that, we don't want to hear that bloody bell ringing for 6 again every 2 minutes. And final point, let's hope the bunker has a good game. Let's just fingers crossed that we don't have to worry about a decision made by the bunker like we did 3 years ago, I think it was now. Because at the end of the day, it's what's on the field and it's so pure, a grand final, that's what we want to remember it for.
Well, I'm still hoping the game goes ahead because she's more trigger happy than John Wayne, that premier up there. So I think if there's one case, it'll all be shut down. But Peter V'landys, I was worried he'd assassinate her if she decided to try and shut this game down. So let's be happy for everyone. I'm happy that both teams are at full strength. I'm happy that Cleary's there. Adam Reynolds has proven his fitness. You don't want a grand final with an asterisk. Everyone's there, and it'll be an absolutely amazing game. The bookies have the teams pretty even. Panthers slight favourites, which surprises me, given that we've had a week off. I read a stat, I think 7 of the last 8 premiers have had the week off, and that wasn't just a week off. That was sitting back, as you said. Wayne Bennett might have even smiled watching that Panthers and Storm match because that was just brutal. And I'm very surprised that we're not favourites, but I don't want to regret those words. I'm quietly confident, as quiet as I can be.
Paul, thanks for that history on the Rabbitohs. It's just that particularly the meat issue. Just for those who don't know, the Shinboners, the North Melbourne club, which is a very working class club, that's where their name comes from 19th century abattoirs, which was the North Melbourne sort of area. So I like that working class history. I didn't know also that your club's won the most premierships in the NRL. In fact, by quite a lot, which I think would surprise a lot of people. Surprised me.
Yeah, having said that, I have got 40 years of support notched up, and this is my second grand final. So it was before my time. We were superb. It was the Dragons and the Rabbitohs. I mean, the Dragons won 12 in a row. So at about that period, it was Dragons, Rabbitohs alternating the same way it has been Roosters and Storm in the last 10 years alternating.
It's the same reason that people are surprised that Melbourne's got so many premierships. I think it's 13, Coutta, but there just hasn't been very many in the last 50 years. Look, just one thing, Paul, Wayne Bennett. One thing that this program has talked about a lot over the years is the importance of coaches. In some ways, it sort of sounds weird to say that you need to pump up the importance of Wayne Bennett because of what he's done over the years, but he seems to have done a remarkable job for your club.
Yeah, I read a great article that 4 of the players tonight are Broncos Discards. Now, they're superstars in this team, and you've got a guy like Dane Gagai, who's one of the best players in the game. He will rise to the occasion tonight. He was booted out because he was just too skinny. Now, he said to Wayne Bennett, "Can I get a game?" He said, "I don't care about your weight. I just love that you put in every game." So what it is, it's that eye for talent that you could overlook someone who goes on to play for Australia, Queensland, multiple premiership winner, simply because he hasn't got enough weight on him. I mean, it's that eye for talent, but what he does he cares for these players, and he has a different approach to each player, and they want to play for him. Ivan Cleary's more an intense type. No doubt he's a technical guru. The players want to play for him as well, but there's just something about Bennett that the players want to play for him. And I'm seeing it crossing over already with Carlton and Michael Voss. You've already got good players saying, "I want to play there because he's an inspiring type." So that Wayne Bennett is the most successful coach. He's eyeing off the second Queensland team, which will be announced soon, and he would be the perfect candidate. We did mention that Redcliffe were the favourites to get there. They've got 100 million to their name, and that there was some history against Wayne Bennett, but I think they've seen reality, and Wayne Bennett will coach the second Brisbane team. And he might have his eyes on some players coming out of contract, one of them being Cameron Munster.
He clearly has 2 personas. The persona that he with his players and his club, and then a media persona. And I'm sure that he couldn't get 2 more different personas because the media, he gives you donuts.
Well, it's interesting you say that, though. He did enough in the lead up to the Panthers game. So he doesn't say that much, but when he talks, people listen. And he certainly got in the head of Penrith father and son Clearys in the lead up to that Panthers game. And it was brilliant because he certainly had the focus on Penrith's illegal blocking without saying too much at all or even cracking a smile. He's very, very shrewd, as you'd expect after that many years in the game.
He's
the other end of the spectrum, though, in terms of calmness, Craig Bellamy would have some real worries on his plate. Some players leaving the Storm, and that was so un-Storm-like, that performance. And having those players run riot like that, I know you might say it's only because it was recorded that we knew about it. there's just some cracks appearing in the Storm, and I'm a bit concerned about their future for the next few years.
Okay.
All right, Paul, a couple of questions for you. Your thoughts on who's going to score the first try?
I might have already had a small investment on Dane Gagai, but I think you better big bet if you're considering a sizable wager is for Alex Johnson to score. That's about the same odds as me having a beer during the game, or it should be the same odds. He'll score at some stage tonight, Alex Johnson, or I don't know what you'd like me to do.
All right.
Wear a Roosters jersey next.
There you go. What about any player scoring multi-tries?
I'm on Dan Gagai. One of the bookies is offering a bonus bet every time he does it, so I'm hoping he scores 5. Dane Gagai, but he was one of the players that Bennett gave a lifeline to. Benji Marshall will be influential in this game, but I think if we do manage the win, it'll be Cody Walker, best on ground, to get the medal. Or perhaps as a sentiment, if that comes into the equation, Adam Reynolds. But he's more an organiser, Reynolds. Cody Walker will need to have an exceptionally good game for the Rabbitohs to win, but he's been doing that 9 times out of 10 this season. Thoughts on a halftime score? Halftime score?
Yep.
16-10 Rabbitohs. Final score, I'll give you 28-18 Rabbitohs. I think we're going to win this just with that week off, combined with Benji Marshall, who I had it confirmed during the week, can solve a Rubik's Cube within a minute. Now, I don't know how much of that's happening in your standard rugby league change room, but Benji's on the cube while everyone else is talking about whatever else they're up to. I know what Cameron Munster wasn't doing on that coffee table, solving a Rubik's Cube.
All right,
So,
now.
Paul, just by the amount of interest, the world record's 3.5 seconds.
Well, it's still, I'd like,
seconds.
yeah, the world record for a rugby league player is probably at 17 months, I think. So you've got Benji doing it in a minute. So he's coming on late. So he is the player that would terrorise Penrith, I'm hoping, at about probably my second beer by that stage that he comes on.
All right, Paul, I was interested in one of the exotic bets that you can have. The first 4 tries scored by players wearing the numbers 1 to 5. You can get $5.50 for that. Any thoughts on whether that could happen or not?
What was it? All 4 tries?
The first 4 tries of the game scored by players wearing the numbers 1 to 5.
Oh, no. A big man will go over at some stage. There'll be a big man who just can't help himself.
But let's gamble responsibly, please, all.
Yeah, of course we will. Yeah. So I won't be
let's not
too much at all. There's a lot at stake,
further,
just emotionally for me. I'm proud of this team. I was in court the day we were readmitted to the comp. We were kicked out. People power got us back in. But if Penrith wins, it's a great story in tough times for Sydney and an area, a part of Sydney that is just true heart and spirit. So I won't be too annoyed.
Well, do you think that if Penrith do win, that the Queen of the Nile machine at Panthers will now be transferred to Nathan Cleary, or will each of the players get their own machine?
Well, that's a story about salary cap alleged breach way back in the day.
Sorry, yeah, alleged.
Greg Alexander, there was a machine, Brandy, they called it the Brandy Spins. It wasn't on the books of the salary cap auditor. So every dollar that came out of that machine went to Brandy because he was considering going to a new team called the Warriors. Now, I don't know if he got the 60,000 in dollar coins, but I do know when the Ian Schubert, the auditor, arrived, it was on wheels like those warehouse trolleys, and out it would go into the storeroom, the Brandy machine. So that's just a rumoured story about an earlier salary cap issue. And it was off the books, that machine. So they kept Greg Alexander, and he's now on doing his media duties. He's one of the best players I've seen. Nathan Cleary, though, could go down as one of the best halfbacks ever.
Paul, you'd be glad to know as well that one of the great rugby minds, one of the most impartial, unbiased people, he's tipped Penrith to win. So I'm actually feeling quite comfortable with South Sydney.
Does that feel good?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Paul, it's
Well,
also
interesting, very quickly, Jamie Packer, Penrith had a $100 million debt. They were going that bad. And the lenders said, we're calling it in. And they said, well, we don't have $100 million. The pokies aren't spinning over that quickly. And Jamie Packer stepped in with $10 million, interest-free. He ended up getting it back, but that was Phil Gould's influence. And Jamie Packer, though, now is bought into the Rabbitohs. So he's a Rabbitohs fan, but obviously he's helped both clubs.
which raises for another day private ownership, which I've been talking about before, and everybody's scared about it. Don't be scared of it, because without private ownership, where will the Rabbitohs be?
Without Russell Crowe, we wouldn't have had either of these premiership opportunities, because it created, much like at Carlton, you want to have a club where players want to be at. And if the players don't want to be at your club, then you're going to perennially struggle and continue to struggle. So we started being a club where players wanted to be at before we won that premiership, thanks to Russell Crowe's influence. So that'd be the same as Eric Banner taking over your club, Judge.
Yeah.
You'd have players thinking there's a buzz here. Great man, passionate supporter. I want to go to St Kilda for 400 when I could go somewhere else for 500.
Yep.
All right, Paul. Well, fingers crossed for the Bunnies, and I think Sportsfan Radio are throwing their weight behind it. So
absolutely,
hopefully it'll be a Melbourne Demons, South Sydney Rabbitohs, Quinella.
Wasn't that long ago, a mate and I used to joke, we'll put on a multi of the two of them a pre-season, and we could have retired with the winnings, because it wasn't that many years ago we were each 100 to 1 to win the whole shebang. I'm not talking about 10, 15 years ago. So we've come a long way, and well done to your Demons.
All right, Gelding, let's look at some racing to finish the show. Turnbull Stakes yesterday at Flemington.
Wow.
Very, very elegant, lowered its colours to incentivise. Is incentivise now the horse to beat?
Oh, well, any horse that wins 8 races in a row, Professor, as I said on That's Racing yesterday, it's hard to tip against the horse. It's won its last 7. So Incentivise has now proven itself as a Group 1 performer. In 2 weeks' time, sorry, Professor.
Has Peter Moody won a Caulfield or Melbourne Cup before?
No. So new territory for Peter Moody, but is accepted as a very, very good trainer. So that certainly won't be the downfall of this horse. Its racing style Incentivise, Professor, it gets out in front and just keeps increasing. Very elegant. Very disappointing yesterday. As you know, we rate it very highly. This is a horse that's won 9 Group 1 races and over $9 million, and Incentivise beat it by a good 3.5 lengths. So won comfortably yesterday by half a length, and you hear the trainer and the jockey say it needed the run to bring it up for 2 weeks' time.
Gelding, you raise a point there that the trainer and that said it needed a run. I think the steward's report is always something that you guys refer to. And in particular, I draw the attention to the way that the horse was ridden that won the Cox Plate last year, Dragonet.
Yeah, so Dragonet, yeah.
How was that ridden yesterday? And would you have been happy if with that ride? Well,
if you have a look at it, it was sitting on pace. Incentivise, it sat on pace last start in the Group 1. My probably version of Sir Dragonet is it won the Cox Plate on an absolute bog track last year. Beat Russian Camelot. So was I unhappy with the ride? No. Do I rate Sir Dragonet behind Very Elegant and Incentivise? Yes. But, this is a Cox Plate winner. I think Sir Dragonet has to have certain conditions to show its best. And that is on a softened track or a heavy track, not yesterday's track.
Yeah, I just found it interesting, Gelding, that they were similar that it needed the run. And I'm thinking, okay.
Well, as you heard the trainer of Incentivise, well, these horses, they're trying to peak for key events. Sir Dragonet's main target is the Cox Plate in 3 weeks' time. So these good trainers, Kieran Maher and all that, are building it for that. And obviously hoping for a very, very wet track. But at the moment, very hard to see any horse going past Incentivize in the Caulfield Cup, unless there's a European that's coming out, maybe Gold Trip, maybe one that may be able to beat it. But it's certainly, as I texted you guys yesterday, if the Caulfield Cup is a leader's track, say as Elstrom did, led from the front, Might and Power has led from the front. So good horses can lead a Caulfield Cup and go away from these horses. And that may be the way Incentivize goes this year. And it may well be that the $2.50 is a good bet. But we've got Zaki for the Cox Plate. Very Elegant is down here for the Cox Plate. She's been a good horse for us to follow, and we may get some good odds about her in the Cox Plate, and hopefully she can improve on yesterday's run.
The actual race, Gelding was actually a pretty good race to watch. Very Elegant, as you said, had every chance. Was flat in the main straight, and there were a couple of other good runs, but the winner was just far too good. And
the winner, the winner was the most impressive run of the lot. It was there to be beaten. Everyone had its shot, Everyone had its shot. So Very Elegant had the run of the race. Young Werther had cover. Incentivize set the pace. And it's not often at Flemington you see horses lead all the way.
And the other thing, Gelding, would be that the jockey of Incentivize, Brett Preble's having an amazing, or we'll say spring so far, but
white hot.
Yeah.
White hot at the moment. So, taking the advantage of probably the Mornington's group's loss of rides, because I think Jamie Carr was doing a bit of riding for Peter Moody before the start of that. So every chance she would have been on Incentivize. And Mark Zara was aboard Very Elegant last year when it won the Caulfield Cup. So
he's doing a Stephen Bradbury.
Yes, people are making the most of why these jockeys are suspended.
Gelding, race 8, Grand Promenade, a good win. Where do you see that horse for the rest of the spring?
Well, now it's won the golden ticket into the into the Melbourne Cup, following the same path as Perzan did last year for the same trainers, Kieran Maher and David Eustace. Perzan ran 5th last year in the Cup, was the highest finisher of any of the Australian bred horses or any of the Australian trained kind of horses. So, look, got to be in there with every chance. Professor, in what's going to be a year where we probably don't see as many international raiders as we normally do.
Yeah, Quarantine will have something to say about all that, Gelding. All right.
Quarantine, and also the new rules brought in by Racing Victoria for scans and that, after there's been so many horses put down after they come here for campaigns, Professor.
Okay.
Very
Gelding.
specifically to Werribee they're going.
Yes. And the harder tracks, that are over here, and, some of these horses aren't used to the constant going around in circles. So different tests on different muscles in the legs.
So, Gelding, is that going to be a long-term effect on Australian racing, those tests? Because it seems to me that is a genuine difference between Australian horses and overseas horses.
Yes, it's been brought in for the Melbourne Cup and seems to be an ongoing by Racing Victoria. They're not saying it's just for a couple of years, John. So they've put it in place. They're getting a lot of feedback from overseas trainers, and you'll see it this year that they're not bringing horses out. The trainer of Prince of Arran, which has run a place in the last 2 Cups has said he's not bringing the horse out because he doesn't think it would pass all those stringent tests, even though it's run places in the Cups, and they're not going to spend £50,000 bringing a horse over, to have it scratched by the stewards. So you'll find this year there'll be a lot of horses that don't come. Of course, Lloyd Williams will still bring out a couple from the O'Brien yards, and because these horses then stay out here. So it'll be interesting to see which horses land and see how they go with this new testing arrangement, because you'd hate to see one come over which is a fancied horse and then all of a sudden is scratched the week before the race by the steward saying it's failed a vet examination.
Yeah.
All right, Gelding, racing today at Bendigo and also Bairnsdale. So any thoughts on those races today?
Yeah, a couple, Professor. A few shorties at Bendigo. I like Damien Lane. As you know, one of our favourite jockeys has gone up there for a few rides. So in race 6, number 3, Gundawindi. Race 7, number 7, Suppression. And race 8, number 12, American Angel. All for Damien Lane. Maybe a nice little parlay, Professor, with the short odds. And I also believe Mick Price can get a winner in race 5, which may be short Litchfield country. Craig Robinson has a couple of rides today. Sportsfan Radio's own, Professor, but I think I might leave them alone today after he got a $13 winner up yesterday at Matoa.
He has a pretty good strike rate on those, Gelding.
His return on investment will be interesting, Professor, and maybe during the week we can have a discussion about the return on investment. Maybe some future outlays. At Bairnsdale, Professor, I think there's a couple of good ones too. Race 4, number 7, Roebling. Race 5, number 7, Rose Dior. And race 7, number 2, Vitesse Breeze. So I like a few today, Professor.
Well, hopefully they'll all come home for you, Gelding. Well, that'll see us out for today. Only a couple of topics, but they were certainly meaty and we got into them. So thank you, gentlemen, for your endeavours today. And until next Sunday, a very good afternoon to you all. And go Rabbitohs.
Go Rabbitohs.
Go Rabbitohs.
Glory, glory.
Thanks, Professor. Great show.